Today's July the 25th, 2023. My name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with Oklahoma State University with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. I'm in Tulsa today to interview Jamie Payne, current Chief Human Resource Officer for St. Francis Health System, after roughly 10 years in human resources with Oklahoma State University. She's also a 1995 graduate of Oklahoma State, so thank you for letting me come today.
Thank you for being here.
And this interview will be part of the Stories from Oklahoma State University, and it's going to focus on Pete's Pet Posse, or P3 for short. By way of context, Pete's Pet Posse, OSU's pet therapy program, was established in 2013 as part of the university's commitment to being America's healthiest campus, and is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. P3 supports the emotional wellness of students, staff, and faculty, and has grown beyond the OSU campus, OSU Stillwater campus, I should say. And it takes a team to get such an initiative off the ground, and as I understand it, Jamie was the Director of Human Resources at OSU when P3 began, and was on the original advisory board.
That's great.
And I think it was, Human Resources was the second home for the program. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Okay. With that said, thank you. And before we get to the P3, let's learn a little bit about you. Start wherever you like.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity for this interview, and I think it's wonderful that you're doing this oral history project on P3. My name is Jamie Payne. I'm currently the Chief HR Officer at St. Francis Health System here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But prior to that, I was with Oklahoma State University for about 10 years in a Chief HR Officer role as well. Had a little short stint at the foundation as well. So did some fundraising as well as worked in human resources. And of course, I bleed orange and graduated from Oklahoma State University in 1995 with a degree in human resources management. So I'm doing exactly what I was trained to do through my education.
And where had you grown up?
So I grew up here in Sand Springs, Oklahoma, and spent most of my life in Oklahoma. Was born in Texas, had a short stint in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and a little tiny stint in California, but I'm an Okie, true and true.
So you would have graduated from high school in
1991.
Sandai, is that right?
Charles Page Sandai. Yes, that's correct.
And why OSU?
Well, when I was growing up, I always wanted to go to a state school, and Oklahoma State University was something that I always wanted to do. And when I got there, it just felt like home. I went through a campus tour and it was very welcoming, and got a work-study job right as a freshman in college, and lived in a little Wilhelm dorm, and went to work for Academic Services for Student Athletes, where I checked athletes in and out of study hall. Did that until my work study ran out, and then went to work at Creative Labs, which was a company that was in Stillwater for quite some time, based out of Milpitas, California, that offered software and sound blaster products and computer parts. Because for the first couple of years of my career, I thought I was going to be an IT major. And then I switched my degree after doing an internship in human resources at Baxter Healthcare, switched my degree to human resources, and absolutely love it. Still in it 30 years later.
So did you live in Wilhelm the whole time?
I did not. I lived in Wilhelm my first semester, and my roommate decided to go back home. And so I found another roommate at Kerr Drummond and moved into the Kerr Drummond dorm the second semester. And then I lived off campus the rest of my college career.
So what floor were you on in Kerr Drummond?
In Kerr Drummond, I was on the 9th floor.
Oh, close to the top. It's 12, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was fun though. I still have lifelong friends from Oklahoma State University. And that's one of the reasons I went back to work there. And just the atmosphere. There's everything about OSU that I love. I truly bleed orange. And now I have 2 children, one that has already graduated from OSU and one that's a sophomore there.
Okay, so your house is orange.
Yes, I am pushing it from day one. Even in the womb, I was telling them they were going to be cowboys.
Well, before you picked OSU, did you visit any other?
I considered OU because, it's just a state school as well. And I grew up around a lot of OU football fans. And I looked at OU, but it just didn't feel like home like OSU. I can't even describe the feeling, but it was just very welcoming. The adults that were on campus that were my bosses through the work-study program, and the people I met through the dorms, and it was just a very welcoming environment.
Was there a class that about ate your lunch?
Oh, my most difficult class? Well, math is probably my most challenging subject. So I would have to say probably business calculus, but I got an A in it. I had a great professor and he worked with me well. And so he helped me through that. And of course, my advisor all through college was Dr. Tom Stone. And I still have a lot of interaction with him today. He's a great guy. Helped me with my career progression and get my certifications through HR certification. So have lifelong friends there.
Did you have a favorite professor then?
Definitely Dr. Tom Stone.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a lot of classes with him because he taught a lot of my business classes, my HR business classes. Compensation was hard. His class compensation was very hard, but also got an A in that one as well.
And what would you do for fun when you weren't studying or working? What would you do?
Well, I spent a lot of time at the Colvin Center. I liked, playing racquetball and just spending time with friends. Of course, I, did the college experience and went to tumbleweeds and, hung out on the strip. But it was mainly just spending time with friends in my dorms and in the apartments that I lived in and hanging out.
Spend much time in the library?
I did, actually. Back when I was in school, we, computers were fairly new and we still did all of our research on paper. And so I had to do all of my research there, and it was the quietest place to study. So I did a lot of studying on that 5th floor in those little cubby holes, in those little areas that had barriers around them so that it was quiet. And then also had some group projects where I would meet my classmates there and we'd work on group projects. But yeah, I spent a lot of time in Edmond Lowe Library.
The card catalog was still there then, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Kids today might not know what that is.
No, my kids don't. They go in there and they want to, they see the 3D printer and, the technology that you can rent out there, which is pretty cool. So,
were they dyeing the fountain orange for homecoming while you were there?
They were.
I don't know when that started. So
yeah, I'm not sure when that started, but I do remember the tradition.
Okay.
And I even stuck my hand in there and got a little orange, and so I bled orange on my hand as well.
And homecoming events, do you remember anything?
Walk around by far is the most memorable homecoming experience, and still go today every year. I don't think I've missed since 1995 when I graduated.
That's good. We've had some good weather days and not so
That's
good.
true. Yes. It's
So,
grown a lot there. I think there's like 80,000 people who attend now.
yes, yeah. Okay, so graduation day. Do you remember that day? Anything about, ceremony or where it was or any of that?
I do, yes. The ceremony was at the football field.
Oh, outside. Okay.
It was outside. It was a beautiful day, and all my family came. And it was a very prideful moment. Of course, my mother was a school teacher, and education was just part of my DNA. I didn't have an option to not go to college, and we were all just beaming with pride on that day to have finished my bachelor's degree and get to move on, and got a couple of job offers right out of college. So I felt very prepared. Had a great education.
Do you remember watching the regalia come in, the professor faculty?
Yes, and I love to see them in all their regalia, and their speeches, and it was really beautiful.
Had you been to something like that before? Had you been to a college graduation before your own?
I had not been to one before my own. That was the first one. I didn't really know what to expect.
Yeah. But your parents had gone, so you weren't first gen.
Yes, my mother went to college, but she was a first generation college student, so it was new to her. Although my grandfather, her father, attended OSU. He did not graduate, but he attended classes in Old Central.
So that would have been in the 1920s or 30s?
I would say, yes, probably in the 30s. Mm-hmm.
What was his last name?
Rose.
Rose,
yeah.
So your maiden name is Rose?
No. My maiden name is Lindsay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes. But my mother's maiden name is Rose.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so did you have siblings?
I did. I have a sister who lives out in California, and she did not go to Oklahoma State University. She actually went to college in California.
So are you older or younger?
I'm the baby.
You're the baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and then your mother, did she have siblings that went to college too, or was she?
She was the only one. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, no, I take that back. Her twin brother attended college until he went to the military.
Okay.
But he did not attend OSU. She actually attended at TU, and also at Southeastern.
Yeah. So when it was time for you to go, did they drive you over and drop you off, or did you drive yourself?
No, my mother went with me and helped me through that process, and she was very supportive. Helped me move in. But it was a much larger school than what she attended, so we were kind of navigating together.
And learn how to do laundry before you went or after you got there?
Did. She taught me to be very independent, so I didn't have any trouble when I went to college being independent, feeding myself and doing my laundry. And yeah, she was one of those mothers that said, "You're going to learn this," and she taught me early on.
Okay. Well, were you besides working and doing your study, were you involved in any other student activities?
I worked full-time and went to school full-time, so I didn't have a lot of time for student activities. Was not in a sorority, but I was involved in the local Society for Human Resource Management chapter for students, and I became an officer. I was the vice president of that organization my junior and senior year, and fairly active in the HR group, and actually ended up getting my certification right out of college because my advisor helped me kind of navigate those waters and connected me with the professional organization. Because at that time, Stillwater did not have a professional organization, a professional SHRM group or Society for Human Resource Management in Stillwater. So he would drive us students to Oklahoma City and Tulsa to meet with the professionals and learn the business a little bit that way. But right out of college, I came back to work in Stillwater and was part of opening that first chapter of Society for Human Resource Management for Professionals. And it's still there today.
And you're still doing some.
Yes. Yes, I am. Now I mentor students at OSU. As a matter of fact, I just hired one of my HR business partners who was an apprentice at OSU just a couple of years ago. Yeah, there's a great mentor program set up through the Spear School of Business that I got involved in.
Okay, cool. That's good. You're giving back.
Yes, for sure. I always want to give back.
And graduating from high school, you never thought you would be sitting here doing this type of work either?
I really didn't. I grew up in a smaller town where it was kind of mostly blue-collar workers and not a lot of educated people in Sand Springs at that time. And so I thought, well, I'll go, get a degree and get a job and just be an individual contributor of some kind. And then I continued to progress through leadership roles and never dreamed I would be, the chief human resource officer for a large health system like St. Francis with 11,000 employees. So it's quite an honor to be here and to be a part of this.
And you have a great office.
I do have a beautiful view. So,
Okay, let's back up then and go through your career. Once you graduated from OSU, your first job was?
I went right out of college. I went to work for United States Gypsum Company, and I went to work for the Oklahoma division, which is out in western Oklahoma, about 70 miles west of Stillwater, up Highway 51, in a little town called Southard, and it is a company town. Really, all that's there is the plant that makes, United States Gypsum Company makes the sheetrock brand, which most people know is drywall. And it was in a management training position there, and had the opportunity to go to California and work in a smaller USG plant where I got to serve as an interim HR manager while the HR manager took a sabbatical to study for the bar exam. And that was a wonderful developmental experience, not only in the profession, but culturally, to explore outside of Oklahoma in another state. And it was a wonderful experience. And then when I came back, I met my husband and fell in love with my husband, Tony, and we moved to Stillwater and went to work for Mercury Marine, or the division in Stillwater was called Mercruiser. They made the inboard, outboard engines, and worked there in human resources capacities, different jobs, elevating to a director level before they closed the operation in Stillwater and moved it to Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. And I really wasn't interested in moving to Wisconsin. The climate's too cold there. And so that's how I landed at OSU. Went to work for Oklahoma State University Foundation for a couple of years, and then moved over to the university as the chief HR officer there.
And in a typical day in that position, once you got to OSU, what would that entail?
There's no typical day in HR. You know, the purpose of HR is to attract, develop, retain, motivate, engage top talent. Whether you're in private, public, nonprofit, higher ed, healthcare, that's always the mission of human resources. And so, one day you may be bringing people in and hiring people and helping them find their career opportunities. And the next day you may be helping them find their next journey through retirement plans. But there's, developing people and training them and helping them grow and find their own way is so rewarding. That's one of the reasons I'm in HR, and the reason I've stayed in HR is because it's just very intrinsically motivating to be a part of that and seeing someone grow. A lot of people start at a company and end at the same company, and you get to see them through that whole progression through their whole life.
Did you have to do any firing?
Well, there's always a little misconduct anywhere you go to work. And so, yes, HR is typically responsible for managing the employee relations, which, sometimes results in ending their employment where they are. But then oftentimes it opens doors and helps them find a place where they're much more happy or successful and are celebrated.
Yeah. So while you were in that position at OSU, did you develop any particular programs like financial literacy or something like that?
Well, we did a lot of great things at Oklahoma State University when I was there. I had a wonderful staff, and I was there during the presidency of Burns Hargis. And of course, Ann Hargis, her platform was, his wife, her platform was wellness. Mm-hmm. And so that was the beginning of the journey for developing a comprehensive or holistic wellness program for everybody, students, staff, faculty. So we kind of moved from this focus on diet and exercise or traditional wellness to a very broad, holistic approach with all the dimensions of wellness, which include, emotional, physical, spiritual, social, all kinds of dimensions. And we hired our first chief wellness officer at Oklahoma State when I was there, and really expanded and focused on helping people through all kinds of emotional and physical well-being, which included Pete's Pet Posse, or P3. Yeah.
And that was about the same time that the campus, or shortly thereafter, the campus earned certification as the healthiest,
Yes,
which involved emotional and mental.
Yeah, we became America's healthiest campus by all of the works that were put in place, and it was a campus-wide initiative, not just at Stillwater campus, but the Tulsa and Oklahoma City campuses. They all developed wellness champions, and those wellness champions would come together and brainstorm ideas and ways to infiltrate wellness in everything we did, whether it's through students or what faculty were doing or staff were doing, but all sorts of programs to engage people in wellness activities to help them grow themselves into better, more healthy people.
So that was about the time too they were putting they did the walk around with the stamp of Pete's head, so you could tell how far you would walk.
That's right.
As part of that.
Yes. That was one of our chief wellness officers had that idea to, get people out and moving and walking and learn about our campus. And this was before QR codes were real big, and so we used the little pewter Pistol Pete heads to help with it. We kind of gamified it with a scavenger hunt, if you will, where you would go to one and it would give you clues to go to the next. And then if you finished it, you would get your own little pewter Pistol Pete head and bragging rights to say you did it.
I still see those around, but I don't know if they do that added step. But
Yeah.
The campus is just prettier too. I mean, that helps with getting you outside too.
Yes. I mean, beautification has always been a component of OSU. It's the prettiest campus in the state of Oklahoma. And I guess it's probably one of the most beautiful campuses in our nation. But we also put in a labyrinth when I was there, which was fun. I didn't really know much about those. That was part of the holistic wellness activities where, people could go there and learn to use a labyrinth and meditate, and it's really cool. I don't know if you've ever done it, but it's fun.
It's beside or across from the CRT.
Yeah, it's pretty close to
Moral Hall.
Between, Moral Hall and kind of close to the Alumni Center.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You accomplished quite a bit. I mean, all that plays back into getting people to come, I guess, to the OSU.
Yes.
The positive side of things.
Yes, and I would say, I spoke to, through Pete's Pet Posse, I would get out and about with them, and I would hear parents say, wow, this campus is so beautiful, and I love the fact that they care enough to have this program in place, these Pet Posse dogs, come out, and then the children would say, oh, I miss my dog, and it's so nice to have them here. And some people, that was the deal breaker that made them choose OSU because, pet therapy was not real big at that time. It was kind of new. And a lot of other universities were looking at us at OSU saying, how are you doing this? How do you get this through legal? Because there is some risk with having an animal on campus. But, it started at the top with, Mrs. Hardis's vision of how this would expand our overall well-being. And then her husband, the president's support, kind of made it okay for us to move forward and progress. And the legal office would say, okay, we're going to do this because this is a presidential initiative, but let's make sure we have risk mitigation factors in place. And so we did. We developed each pet team, the owner, handler, and the dog had to go through a rigorous process to get in the program. We had many, many applicants for very few spots. And of course, they had to become certified through Canine Good Citizenship certification, which shows that they were obedient enough not to be unruly on a college campus. And then they also had to become certified through Alliance for Therapy Dogs, or ATD. And that would show that they were relational and not vicious. But before they ever even got admitted into the program, we went through an interview process where, first of all, the owner/handler, which was also an employee of OSU, had to have the right demeanor and personality, because they talk to people who present real problems, and they need to be able to handle those problems and know how to get them to resources. And so after the interview with the owner handler, then we would evaluate the dog, and the veterinarian who we worked with, Dr. Sipniski, would assess the dog for good health. And then the trainer would assess the dog for disposition. So if a dog was too shy or too aggressive, they wouldn't make a good therapy dog. And so we had some great owner and handlers who had shy dogs and they couldn't get in the program. And then you had to be, you couldn't be too young, couldn't be too old. I think the youngest we took was a 12-year-old dog. But yeah, so we mitigated risk through all kinds of screening factors. And then once they became certified through Alliance for Therapy Dog, the program came with over $1 million worth of life insurance for the dog. So if anything were to happen, the insurance should cover it as long as they followed all the rules of the program. So, as a board member for the Pet Therapy Advisory Board, we would audit those records every year and make sure those dogs had their appropriate wellness, vaccinations and examinations, and reassess them every year. And then we would also provide training to the owner handlers every year to, go over scenarios that might happen and talk to them about, how to address certain situations they might encounter. So yeah, it's a professional program that requires a lot of diligence and structure in order to be, safe, as dogs can be.
So around the table for the advisory board in the beginning would be, sounds like a lawyer, or at least someone from the legal field.
Yes. So when Mrs. Hargis had the vision for this, I believe she might have got the idea from Dr. Sipniski, who was a veterinarian in the OSU Veterinary Medicine College. And she had the idea to do it. And then Ann Hargis and Kendria Cost, who was a marketing coordinator for Mrs. Hargis at the time, she worked in human resources but supported the initiatives, the wellness initiatives that Mrs. Hargis was working on. They kind of came together and said, we think that we can do this, and let's figure this out, and who needs to be at the table in the beginning. And so I was brought in from an HR perspective, and of course our legal counsel was brought in, as well as our counseling department. We had Susie Burks from student counseling, and then Dr. Gentry from the Employee Assistance Program come in.
Okay.
So it was a very small advisory group early on, and we started developing protocol of how this would work, and we decided to put together a little pilot program, which I believe only included about 8 dogs and owner handlers that first year, and we call them teams of 8. And of course, Kendria Cost and Mrs. Hargis were 2 of those owner handlers in that inaugural class. And so they kind of got to go through, experience it themselves, and see what needed to be adjusted and what went well and what didn't go well and how we could make it better, as well as Alyssa Huckabee, who is now the dog trainer for the program. When her dogs, she was a student, a veterinarian student at the time, and we made an exception because we typically don't allow students to be in the program, but she was very mature and a dog trainer, and she's now the trainer for the program. So that first class, which also included Jan Jewell, who was affiliated with the OSU Foundation, we all kind of came together and had ideas of how we could fundraise for the program and grow it to be much larger than what it was that first year. But the inaugural class was very successful, and we had such a demand from students, staff, faculty, people reaching out saying, how can I get a pet therapy dog to come visit me? That it became overwhelming, and we quickly realized we're going to have many more teams of dogs and owner handlers working on all of the campuses, not just the Stillwater campus, but the Tulsa campus, the Oklahoma City campus. They were reaching out, what about us? We want to have a program as well. And so it exploded. We could have 10 to 12 dogs per class. And at first we thought, we could have a class maybe every 18 months. Well, now they're having a class every year. So it's just continued to grow and expand and be such a popular program. And of course, it expanded into a student organization because we quickly realized that it's a lot to go out as an owner handler and a dog and serve where needed without any help or support. And so we started asking students to come along and help, direct traffic and help, just look at the crowd and make sure nobody's scared of the animal and just help adjust as needed. And then to take pictures for social media and to talk to the students, because a lot of times the owner handler is talking to someone else and they have questions about the dog, and it just expanded it. So they started a student organization, an official student organization on the OSU campus called the Ruff Riders, like RUFF, Ruff. And it's a very popular program among students today.
Thinking this when you think it's continuing to grow, did you ever stop and think, well, maybe we can't do this anymore and just stop?
Well, people would ask us, what is your goal? How many dogs do you want on campus? And we never really gave an answer. We said we just need to look at the data and how much they're needed. Now, we became a much more strategic moving forward in how we selected individuals for the program, in that we wanted, as many dogs across the whole campus as possible. So we didn't want a concentration of a lot of dogs in one department. So we started being strategic about, okay, we need one in the engineering department, we need one in the College of Business, and now we need one in, human resources. And so we started expanding to make sure we were covering the entire campus at Stillwater as well as the other campuses. So the selection process not only included, the disposition of the owner handler and the dog, but also what your job entailed.
Department had to agree.
Yeah.
I had to let you do it, I guess. Or.
Yes. The departments, every department was very supportive. I mean, from time to time, we would have some students or mainly a faculty member or a staff member say, I'm scared of a dog, or maybe I'm allergic to a dog. And we trained our owners and handlers on how to deal with that and address that. That's one of the Ruff Riders' jobs, is to kind of watch and make sure nobody's uncomfortable with the dog around, and to not force the dog on anyone, but let people come to the dog when you're stationary. And then, for someone who might be allergic to a dog, just knowing that and being open and honest up front. We had a dog early on. We had Evie in Human Resources, which was Lorinda Schrammel's dog, and she was our training and development manager at the time. And one of her employees who worked in the training and development department said, I love dogs, but I'm allergic to them, so I can't necessarily pet them. So we were just cognizant of that and made sure, we kept the dog out of her department. And actually in the College of Business, when they built the new U-shaped building, we made separate air systems. So there's kind of a side that the dogs don't go on. The air handling system shouldn't have a lot of pet dander in it, because we tell owners and handlers not to take their dogs on that side, and any faculty member that's allergic to a dog can work on that side of the building. But I will say, Dr. Sipnewski did some research on pet dander, and it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. So you can't get away with it. I mean, that chair you're sitting on right there, I'm sure has some dog dander in it, because I have 2 dogs and a cat at home, and I probably had some on my pants, and you probably have some on you now. And so, but there aren't, as far as we know, there aren't any people who are so highly allergic that they will go into anaphylactic shock over pet dander. So, there's ways of getting around those concerns that a lot of people might have. I know when people would call us and benchmark our program, they would say, what about allergic people? What about, the legal risk? And what about all the concerns and risks? And most of those are pretty easily to work around, as long as you have protocols in place and you follow them and you make sure that you're auditing those and sticking by those.
Do the owner handlers have to sign a contract?
They do.
Or something that says, I know these are the rules?
Yes. Actually, they do it once a year. So when an owner and handler is accepted into the program, they sign an agreement that they will comply with all of the rules, as well as the health expectations of the dog. The dogs have to be clean and neat, and have to have wellness exams every so often, and they have to adhere to submitting to those examinations. And then every year they agree to do so many trainings, as well as following through with those and re-signing that agreement once a year.
Kind of like CEUs in a way.
Yes, it's continuing education. Once you're certified, you just have to continue to go to classes. And
well, from the very beginning, was there a hub, or was it just in Kendria's office? I don't know.
Yes, so it really started, we thought maybe we would start it in the veterinarian school, but decided that's probably not the best place for it, because the veterinarian office is there to care for animals and learn about animals. And so we decided to move it to human resources. And, being the chief HR officer at the time, I was extremely excited. And Kendria was kind of the coordinator of the program. She was the coordinator of the program. And she had an office in human resources. So we tried to set everything up into her little office. And for the most part, the dogs and owner handlers would be stationary within the units where their owner worked. But we would have common places where we would serve. For instance, we had Wagon Wednesday at the library, and we had Bow Wow Bennett on Tuesdays, and then we had Hounds in the Hallway at HR. And so we had all these fun names, and every week we would have locations where anybody, students, staff, faculty, could find the animals and come to the animals. And then we started a process through the website where people could sign up to have the dogs come to them. Of course, they were involved in some crisis response where maybe I remember one time distinctly where one of the sorority houses lost a sorority sister, and we took a couple of the dogs to the sorority house and helped console them. And of course, this program started in 2013, which was not too far before the parade tragedy, where that lady drove through the OSU homecoming parade and killed 4 people and injured dozens more. And immediately following that incident, we set up resources for people who were impacted by that. And there were hundreds of thousands of people impacted by that. Not only if they weren't injured, they may have witnessed it or experienced emotional stress as a result of that. And so we set up kind of a command center location where anybody could come and get help. And we had counselors there, we had clergy there, and what we found was there was a stigma with meeting with a counselor, but there's not a stigma with meeting with a dog. And so people would come and pet the dog and get some interaction with the counselor and decide, maybe I do need to talk to someone. And then we would find a private room for them. So they're a wonderful conduit to bring people in for other resources and help when needed. I know a lot of times the owner and handler will be out and about, and they'll come across a student that's distraught in some way, and they'll refer them to a counselor or take them to the reboot center to get a little reboot time and relax. And so it's not just about, getting to see those dogs and getting those trading cards. Each one of the dogs have a trading card that kind of looks like the old baseball cards with their picture on it and their demographic information on the back. And a lot of the students make a fun game out of getting all of them. I know when my son was a student, his girlfriend was very interested in the program, and she wanted to collect every trading card of every dog. And I believe at the time we had about 65 or 70 dogs working. And so she was constantly looking for them and seeking them out just so she could say she had all the cards.
Well, as the advisory board, these are top decisions you guys would make.
That's correct. The advisory board was involved in everything from, the name to the logo that we chose to the activities, the celebratory activities. Of course, I have to give Kendria Cost credit for most of the creativity. She is the most creative person I've ever met and is the brains behind many of these fun activities, like the Baccalaureate celebration. So at the end of each class, they have a graduation ceremony called the Baccalaureate, and they bring in a commencement speaker. And when I was there, it was the vice president of student affairs, and she came in her full regalia and gave a graduation speech. And then afterwards, the dogs would come across the stage and get their diplomas, and we would have cupcakes for the dogs and cupcakes for the humans and celebrate that wonderful milestone of graduating. And then they have to work in training for a little while and shadow a more experienced team and learn kind of how it works. And then after a few times, they can go out and start working on their own.
Well, how did they come up with the P3? Do you remember that?
Well, Pete's Pet Posse, of course, Pete is, our mascot, Pistol Pete. We had to get his name in there. And, of course, Posse is the classification that we use for sports tickets. But we had some debate about whether or not to call it a dog therapy program or a pet therapy program. And we decided we wanted to leave it pet, kind of a generic term, so that it could expand someday, possibly to cats or maybe a pony, or I don't know. I don't think they've expanded it yet, but we wanted to leave the options open so that maybe someday it will be something other than just dogs.
PPP versus P3.
Yes. Yeah, Pete's Pet Posse is what we said at first, but it's kind of a mouthful. It's hard to say that. And so we shortened it to P3.
Okay, and were you there when they did other PR things like the Bow Wow Festival?
Oh, the Bow Wow Film Festival. Yes, that was so fun. So early on, I think it was probably a couple of years into the program, we learned about this film festival that was all made up of dogs. It's called the Bow Wow Film Festival. And it's a nationwide program. And we started exploring and watched some of the videos that were put out, and it was such a fun activity that we decided to do one for our Pete's Pet Posse dogs. And so we found a camera crew on Stillwater campus and made our own film, and it was really cute, and we presented it to the national organization, and they said, we want to actually host the film festival on your campus. And so we actually did a little fundraising for it and had some generous donors help us get the program started. And so every year they create a film, and students, staff, faculty, whoever, fans, anybody can come and watch the shows. And they're little short films that are all about dogs. Some of them are funny, some of them are sad. But maybe someday these films will end up on the big screen. Who knows?
And it was mostly for a fundraiser as well as PR in general.
Yeah, a little bit of PR and some fundraising for the program.
And it's still going on. No one else has said so.
Yeah, I think they continue to do it. I can't remember if it's yearly or every other year, but a pretty neat little program.
And then the trading cards were part of that. And then Shed happens.
Oh, yes. So there's all kinds of PR materials that are developed with the Pete's Pet Posse logo. First of all, they wanted the owners and the dogs to be branded because it's somewhat of a risk mitigating factor. So if, there's students that bring dogs on campus that might be comfort dogs, and there's people who bring dogs on campus that are service dogs. But we wanted to make sure everyone knew the difference between a comfort dog, a service dog, and a therapy dog. And a therapy dog is there to serve the campus, anybody on campus, and to provide a therapeutic environment. So we really like the tartan plaid, the OSU tartan plaid, and tried to figure out how we could get some of that material to make the dog's vests. But we couldn't come by it. It was trademarked, and we somehow couldn't get our hands on it, and we needed it quickly. So we ended up buying some tartan plaid umbrellas and cutting them up and sewing them on one of those canvas orange vests that the dogs wear. And so that's how that got started. And then we wanted to make sure that the owners and handlers also had some branding on them so people would know who they are. So they have branded leashes, and they have branded shirts and jackets and hats, and they have a backpack full of things that they might need for their dog, like water and treats and poop bags, and because they have to clean up after their dogs on campus. And of course, their trading cards. Actually, the dogs have a little zipper pocket on their vest where the trading cards just fit perfectly. And of course, they have their names on them, and they say they're therapy dogs. So
I'm assuming all that's trademarked now.
yes, all is trademarked.
Something.
Yeah. So those. Yeah, and then you can buy, usually at the Bow Wow Film Festival, there's a film t-shirt that you can buy. There's also on the Pete's Pet Posse website some materials you can buy. If you just want to have a jacket or a shirt with Pete's Pet Posse on it, you can.
How did they come up with the logo?
So the logo, we wanted it to be, dog friendly, but also, of course, have some orange in it and be associated with the Cowboys. So they picked kind of the cowboy looking star to be the logo, and they embellish it and put different words. Like I think we're coming up on our 10th anniversary, and right now there's a big 10 in it to show that it's the 10th anniversary for the program.
And so paw print or something.
Yes,
part of that.
That's right.
So,
yeah, and I think the paw print might be the paw print of Charlie, who is Kendrick Huss' dog from the inaugural class.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then, since we're back to that, didn't you help somebody get a dog?
I did. Did Lorinda tell you about that? So Lorinda Schrammel, who was the training and development manager at OSU, heard about a dog that had been brought to the veterinarian's office there on the OSU campus, named Evie. And Evie, I think she was about 2 years old at the time. Looks like she had some border collie mix and maybe even some Aussie in her, beautiful dog, but she had some health problems. I think she had heartworms and things. And they said she needed to be adopted. And so Lorinda and I walked over there one day, and Lorinda said, I think this is the dog that is going to live on my farm and become trained to be a pet therapy dog. And I really wanted to have one in human resources so that we could learn from the experience. And of course, who doesn't want to have a dog in the office every day? So she adopted Evie, and she went through some therapy or some treatment to nourish her health. And then when she became well, she went through the training program as well as became certified and worked in that capacity until she passed away. But Lorinda worked her a lot. She came to the office, I'd say 3 days a week. And, that's a lot for an owner and handler to be able to do your work and train and take care of a dog and take them out and make sure they're taken care of and safe. And so it was an extra responsibility on Lorinda's part, but it's so rewarding that it's worth it. But I would ask her, I'd say, can Evie come in my office? And I would just lay on the floor and pet Evie, and people would come in just to see the dog. Sometimes HR is an environment that people don't want to come in. I don't know why. It seems like the principal's office sometimes. But people would say, I'll come in if the dog's in. And so it was a great way for us to bring in employees, mostly staff and faculty, and students too, actually. I had one student that came in my office often, and I think she became one of the first Ruff Riders in the program. She was instrumental in starting that Ruff Rider program.
How would they know they were there? Would they have to get to social media to know that, or would it be posted outside or something?
So there's two ways that you would know a dog was available. One was we posted the schedule on the website. So social media, we would post, Evie's going to be in Human Resources today, or we're going to be in the library today from 2 to 4. And then owners and handlers have special signs on their door that have a little hanging bone that says we're in or we're out. And so people kind of scope out where those dogs are typically housed, where their offices are, and they walk by and say, oh, they're in or they're not in, and they know when to come.
And if that bone is out, it's okay if they come. It's okay to come in if it says they're in, though. Just walk in and
yes, yeah.
Most
every owner handler has an open door policy,
okay.
And so it'll say, come in, we want to see you, and we're here to serve.
If Lorinda hadn't taken Evie, were you going to?
Well, I may have. We did have one other lady in Human Resources actually 2 others. I take that back. She's head of benefits now, Rachel Schreffler, had a little pug in the program named Bugsy that was so much fun. I don't know what it is about pugs, but people love pugs, and they would come in and just lay around with Bugsy and come to see Bugsy. And then one other gal ended up bringing a little Yorkie in the program. Toby had a little Yorkie in the program. So we ended up with 3 dogs in Human Resources. But Human Resources became separated. We started all in the Whitehurst building, and then the Employee Relations Department moved over to the old business building, the General Access building.
I didn't know that.
So they had some over there, and then some in the Whitehurst. I think they're all in the General Access building now, which is perfectly located right across from the Student Union, right in the center of campus.
Okay, and so you knew all the the first 8.
I did.
Was there ever one that was like, I don't know, 3-legged or injured or something?
We did.
Like that?
We had some, let's see, I was trying to think of, I think we did have a 3-legged dog. I can't think of the name of it though. But I was trying to think. I can't think of the name of that dog. But I think we did have one that was 3-legged, but that might be a better question to ask Kendria.
Yeah, I'll ask. And then what about ones with the wheels, like to help them with their...
Oh, yes. We had one dog that her back legs were injured early on and she could not walk. And we had somebody build and donate a little tiny wheelchair for that dog. And I'm telling you, that dog did so well in the program. And of course, people just migrated to it just because it was fascinating to give that dog such a quality of life back. Before its wheelchair, it could just barely pull itself along with its front legs because both of its back legs were paralyzed. But once it got the wheelchair, it got around pretty quick, just like the other dogs.
Was it in the program before and after?
It was. It was in the Pete's Pet Posse program, yes.
Its disposition was...
It was very good disposition, yes.
Would they, like for holidays, homecoming, that sort of thing, would the dogs dress up any particular way that you remember?
We celebrated and dressed up the dogs any chance we got. I remember the first year we had a Valentine's celebration, and John Stevens, who worked in the landscaping area, built us a little platform, a kissing booth. And we had a little sign on it that said "Smooch a Pooch," and people would come in to kiss the dogs and take pictures with the dogs. It was so much fun. But yeah, we did all kinds of activities with, Halloween dress up, and of course they're out and about for homecoming in their orange. And one dog wore an orange tutu, I think, just about every day to work. So they all expressed their own little personalities. It's cute.
Well, that's pretty. That brings in more people too. I guess catch their attention.
It really does.
Do you have? It's been 10 years old. Do you think most people know about it now, or they still need to be doing some major PR?
I think it's pretty well known. As a matter of fact, it's known nationwide. When I was there, I actually spoke to other campuses about it. I spoke on a national circuit at some conferences about our holistic wellness program. And of course, the pet therapy program was the focus of that program. And so it's pretty well known. I know Ohio State University set up a call and benchmarked what we were doing and wanted to kind of mimic our program. I'm not sure they ever got it through their legal counsel, but they didn't have the top-down support that we had early on, so they were still trying to convince. But I think as we continue to grow the program and get more and more data on, how many people were utilizing the program, it just continued to grow and expand, and then move to other campuses. That it just will continue to expand. As a matter of fact, I have brought the concept here to St. Francis, where I am now. We now have a pet therapy program here that not only serves patients, but serves our employees. It's called Pink Paws because we are a pink hospital, and we have 8 teams working pet therapy and owner-handler dog combinations that serve all of our campuses as well.
So on any given day, there might be at least one dog in the building?
Usually, yes. We'll schedule them to go to our Muskogee campus or our Bonita campus, or to some of the Warren Clinic locations, or right here on the main campus. Sometimes, the patients will ask to see them. Sometimes the staff and faculty will ask. Of course, we had that terrible tragedy here where we had a shooting on June 1st of 2022 that killed 2 of our physicians, 1 of our patients, and a medical assistant. And those pet therapy dogs were instrumental in, the healing process and getting people together immediately following that tragedy.
What do you think that power is, or the magic of the dog?
There's just something about those dogs that make you feel so comfortable. It just opens your heart. The empathy for yourself and those around you grows when you're around the dogs. It really is. There's some kind of a magic in a pet therapy dog that people will lay on the hospital floor and hold a dog, or lay on the floor in a classroom and pet a dog, and just let their hair down and let all their stress kind of go away just to be in that moment and be present with the dog. And of course, they're very comforting for people who might be missing their dogs. You know, a lot of students are away from their homes for long periods of time, and they were attached to their dog at home, and helps to fill that void when they're at school.
And I'm thinking if they get attached to the ones at school and something happens to that, is there how is that handled on the P3 end?
Yeah, that's always, that's the circle of life in that, we've lost some P3 dogs over the years. And as a matter of fact, some from the inaugural class have left us. Evie, of course, who I call my stepdog. I'm kind of the stepmom of Evie. She passed away not too long ago, and it's very sad, but it's also an educational experience for students to maybe experience it from a distance, so that when maybe they have a death in their family, they can relate to how that felt and what kind of coping mechanisms might be available to them when that does happen.
So you've mentioned a couple of times fundraisers, so this is a self-supported group?
It was, yes. The university, is state funded, and we didn't feel it was appropriate to use any state funds for that program. And so it started with, humble beginnings with a few very small donations. And, we tried to just find volunteers to donate their time. And as it continued to grow and become more of a routine responsibility for people, more and more donors would come out and say, I really like this program, I want to support it. And, they created an endowment with a fund that people can select when they want to give a donation to the university. They can select the pet therapy program to give their funds. And that's how the program expanded from the little office in Human Resources to now the Center of Pet Therapy in the Student Union, which is much more professional and convenient and available and routine for students or staff or faculty in need.
How much? I wouldn't have a clue how much they need in order for it to, not have to do that.
Yeah, well, there's cost associated with training the dogs. There's the gear. There's, printing cost for the badges. There's training cost to keep the owners and handlers educated on the latest and greatest techniques and tools. There's, we offer some scholarship programs for owners and handlers who want to be in the program that might not be able to afford the wellness exams or some of the financial requirements of just owning a dog. And so there's a couple of scholarships offered every year for maybe a faculty member that might not have the means to pay for it. So there's lots of donor opportunities to support the students, the Ruff Riders, and all the activities that they have through their regular meetings and their, meal plans, things that they do at their meetings where they need food or they need, some support with marketing or things like that. So there's administrative support, there's student support, there's lots of ways to support the pet therapy program through that endowment or even just direct donations.
And then there's someone mentioned the coloring book. I've not seen the coloring book.
The coloring book is so cute. It's a hot commodity. I do. I should have brought it with me today.
You have a spare.
I do at my house. I didn't even think of bringing it, but yes, there's a coloring book, and I believe it includes the first 2 classes of dogs and owners. And I think we were selling them for $5 in the student union. And the proceeds from those went to the program to help fund the program. But they were so much fun. Kids or adults, a lot of adults like to color. I like to color, can color in them and hang them up. And of course, the owners and handlers like to see their pictures and faces in those coloring books too.
Yeah, I miss that. I mean, I've not seen one, so that's probably been what, in the last couple of years or further back than
Yeah, I
that.
would say it's probably 5 years ago when we published the first one. I don't know if they've published any others since then. There's some products in the student union for sale that are Pete's Pet Posse products. For instance, they had a rustic cuff that was a bracelet that had the logo on a charm. It was a really nice piece of jewelry. I bought one while I was there. I love it. And they also the Pete's Pet Posse partnered with a program to help grow developmentally disabled young adults. And they started making their own pet treats. And so they help employ these young developmentally disabled individuals, and they also make pet treats to sell. So you can buy a bag of Pete's Pet Posse treats in the student union, and of course the proceeds go to the program.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Reboot. Do the pets go into that area as well?
They do. The dogs will go anywhere they really are needed. Other than we try not to put them directly into the food court and around food. But, the Reboot Center is a wonderful facility for students, staff, faculty to go and just learn to relax. I tried it one time. It's a computer simulation program, a very tranquil environment where you hook up and, it monitors your heart rate and they use breathing techniques to play games. So you kind of gamified it. And your avatar doesn't move unless you are relaxed. And, this type A personality had a little bit of a hard time learning to meditate and breathe the way, in a relaxing manner in order to, have kind of a peaceful mindset. And so a lot of times the dogs will be in there and, just help people relax, or sometimes we'll take people to the Reboot Center with the dog.
Was that part of HR or was that part of something else?
That was part of the Student Counseling Center there in the Student Union, and it's still
I
there.
wasn't sure. Okay. HR gets their hands in all sorts of things, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, human resources, we're here to serve humans, right? So, but we extended that to the fur humans, or the fur babies.
And did the Pete's Pet Posse move before you left or after you left?
They left after. Okay. So I left about 3 years ago. I've been here at St. Francis, and I think they moved shortly after I left over to the student union. But I've been back to visit. My daughter goes to school there, and every time I'm on campus, I try to step into the student union to see who's working and what's going on with the program. And
I was thinking if you were there when they left, you would have missed them a lot.
I would have, yes. I probably would have been migrating over to the student union quite often to see them. But they, for the most part, they stay in their owner handlers' offices. So the Student Union Center for Pet Therapy is a hub where they can go and have activities and answer questions and find resources. But a lot of times the dogs are still in the offices where their owner works.
Except, I guess, with Kendria, she could bring hers. That would be, since that's her office.
Yes.
Hers would be there.
Yes.
Charlie or Sutton, I think.
Sutton just finished, I think, or is in the program now. Yeah, so she has two.
So how often would the advisory board meet?
We met about once a month. Early on when the program was being developed, we would meet more frequently as needed to, get the process going, develop the application and the criteria and the legal requirements and the training programs. And so a lot went into developing it. But after it was, in process and running smoothly, we would meet once a month. And of course, during the one time a year when the selection of the next class is occurring, there's kind of a small subcommittee that works on that selection process.
That would, once a year, would probably divide that between the dog and the human.
Yes. Of course, the veterinarian and the trainer were more focused on the dog, and the counselors and HR were more focused on the human.
At any time did the legal come into play?
The legal definitely had their input and stamp on everything that we did, of course, to try to mitigate risk as much as possible.
But did it have to be applied? I mean, did someone
Do we ever have any
negative or whatever?
issues?
Yeah.
We had a near miss one time where a student brought just a pet on campus that kind of went after one of our pet therapy dogs, and that was a little frightening. But our owner handlers do not violate those policies because they don't want to lose their status. They want to be a part of that. And we pick people who are servant heart minded and they just want to be there to serve and that are going to follow the rules. So luckily, knock on wood, we haven't seen any, as far as I'm aware, any concerns or issues where we've had to involve legal from a reactionary standpoint.
And your policy and procedures has worked well.
We vetted those very well, and of course legal had a lot of input. And we also did a lot to educate the campus on what these animals were there for and what they would do. And the Ruff Riders are used to kind of help educate the people when they come up. We tell them, some dogs don't like to be held, some dogs don't like to be hugged. And so, we kind of know which dogs are okay with being held and hugged and which dogs are not. And so we kind of proactively talk to people as they come up and say, you can pet him or you can hold him. And so they know what's appropriate and what's not for that specific dog.
And you said there was some age range. So a 1-year-old, what would be the oldest?
Oh, goodness.
A lot of factors in there too.
Yeah, Bugsy might have been 10, 12, somewhere around there. So, if they were too old, they wouldn't get to serve very long because getting through the process takes some time. By the time they're selected, they go through usually 8 to 10 weeks of training. Some of the dogs need a little more time than others. After they're finished with the training, then they would go into kind of a mode where they are practicing. And so it takes some time to get up to speed. And so
3 or 4 months, it sounds like, or longer.
Yeah, at least 3 or 4 months to be fully functional. And you want to make sure that you get at least a couple of years out of them after they've been trained and to serve.
I'm thinking the older ones would be more laid back, potentially more laid back than the younger ones.
Yes.
Sit still for an hour.
And there are students, staff, faculty that prefer kind of the laid back, easy dog. And there are students that prefer kind of the playful dogs that they can play around with and jump around with and run around a library lawn and talk to. The owner handler has to keep them on the leash so they don't let them run wild on campus, but they can at least get in their lap and get close to the.
It's a short leash too.
It is. Depending on how big the dog is. If it's a small dog, they can have a little bit longer leash, but if it's a big dog, I think it's like 6 inches.
Yeah,
6 to 12 inches. It's really small. That's part of the rules of the Alliance for Therapy Dog Insurance. In order to have that insurance, you have to follow those rules.
And the handler always has to have a hold of it. It can't be the Ruff Rider or...
That's correct. The handler's the one trained to handle it.
And responsible, I guess.
They're not supposed to pass it off to another person.
I just was amazed by how short. And I think I'd have a dachshund, it would be really, it'd be longer, but
you'd have to have a little bit longer leash for that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does someone need you? You want to stop?
Yes, you don't mind. Let's see what this is all.
So we've covered a lot. Is there anything else we need to cover before we say thank you?
I just want to say thank you for doing this program to get the word out about Pete's Pet Posse and what a wonderful service this is to Oklahoma and beyond. Thank you for doing this and thank you for the opportunity. I'm glad to be a part of it.
You're welcome, and go Pokes, right?
Go Pokes,
Go Pokes.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.